Well, when Kayla approached me back in May about the possibility of the Dover Church's Mission and Action Committee helping to lead today's service, I cheerfully ran this proposal by my fellow committee members and then responded affirmatively. This should be right up my alley, right? After all, I was raised in a family culture where volunteerism was highly valued. As I've always mentioned any number of times to our pastors and congregation members, when I first became acquainted with the Dover Church several years ago and learned of its calling to meaningfully serve others, I felt I had found a spiritual home. Add to this the fact that the Mission and Action Committee, after going into a period of what I'll gently call semi-dormancy during the earlier days of the COVID pandemic, regained its momentum last September and has been moving forward energetically ever since. How special then to have this opportunity to share my reflections with you today about Mission and Action's role and initiative since that time, and how they mesh with the values of our church. Then humbling reality hit me. Here's why. First, it's certainly valuable to periodically revisit who our long-standing mission partners are, as well as the one-off service initiatives we've undertaken as a church these past few years. Our hope has been, and continues to be, that this practice will keep our mission efforts, outreach efforts present and vibrant for all of us, while at the same time letting guests and new members learn more about who we are as a faith community. We also wanted to provide a welcoming invitation to folks to suggest service outreach we hadn't yet considered or maybe haven't done in a long time. Still, I pondered whether you would find it very interesting if all I did today was to limit my remarks to a 10-minute recitation of what we've been doing to serve others lately. Secondly, I recognize we are all pretty busy people carrying our own responsibilities, and this can be quite a load during these often confusing, challenging, and sometimes downright frightening times. Despite this, I've repeatedly seen over and over how members of our congregation have reliably and caringly stepped up when invited to contribute time, funds, donations, prayers to our neighbors in need, be it local, national, or global. But how far can we rationally push this, so to speak? I confess, I sometimes have wondered whether there might be some sort of a sweet spot between what the Dover Church calls joyful service and edging into making too much of an ask. After all, doesn't it sometimes feel like whatever small acts of kindness we do, even if it takes a lot of time and energy — I'm looking here at Beth Benjamin, not to call you out, Beth, but she is just our rock star director of congregational life. And I see how she and others, Kayla, Max, church council, have just poured so much time and energy into what we do. But doesn't it sometimes feel like whatever small acts of kindness we do, it's just a drop in the bucket? The need in our world is so great, so daunting, and we're just one church. Well, I'll be coming back to this point later. And finally, here's the kicker. Today's lectionary section that Dexter just read to us from the 2 Kings, telling how the army commander Naaman was healed of leprosy by washing himself 7 times in the Jordan River. How could I possibly tie that in with the Mission of Action Committee's vision? Well, let's start with that Old Testament passage. And I owe a big debt of biblical interpretation to Kayla for assistance on this one. Yes, I do, Kayla. Don't shake your head at me. Talk about being overwhelmed by circumstances. The king of Israel, learning that the king of Aram has sent his army commander Naaman to him to be cured of a terrible disease, tears his robes in despair and cries, "Am I God? Can I kill and bring back life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of this leprosy?" See how he's trying to pick a quarrel with me. To him, this is beyond his regal abilities and a no-win situation. The need is just too great to address, even for a king. The prophet Elisha, a man of God, learning of the king's reaction, responds by telling him to send Naaman to him. Naaman shows up in full military regalia, horses, chariots, the works. And he's angered when Elisha simply sends a messenger out to advise him, "Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored and you will be cleansed." Well, this doesn't sit well with Naaman. He had expected a big, powerful, dramatic production. That Elisha would come out himself, call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand, and cure his leprosy. In fact, why wash in the Jordan River when he could have saved himself the trip and washed instead in the rivers of his native Damascus, which were clearly better than the waters of Israel? Luckily, Naaman's servants convinced him to follow Elisha's instructions, saying, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed?" A simple thing. Naaman dips himself in the Jordan River 7 times, and his flesh is restored, clean like that of a young boy. Can such a small and simple act yield such powerful results when bolstered by faith? It did in Naaman's case, and I would argue that the same is true today with the Dover Church's mission outreach, and let me give you just a few examples. I recently delivered some groceries donated by members of the Dover Church to a young single mother, Jackie, in Family Promise Metro West's LIFE program, which assists financially struggling families that have previously been homeless or risk becoming homeless. Our congregation has historically focused on supporting Family Promise's shelter program, shelter families, but the organization had made a special one-time request to us on Jackie's behalf. We all know that food prices have skyrocketed during this inflationary period. Jackie gratefully told me that the level of income her job brings in is such that she's ineligible for food stamps, but at the same time is frequently insufficient to cover living expenses for her family. This simple contribution of a few bags of groceries would get her family through a very tough week. When she learned I was from the Dover Church, she smiled and said, "My family and I used to be in Family Promise's shelter program, and your church hosted us when we were homeless." For many years, our church has run collection drives for a place to turn, a local food bank in Natick, as well as the Women's Lunch Place, a daytime shelter and advocacy center for homeless or impoverished women in the Boston area. Like Family Promise Metro West, these organizations transform lives in an atmosphere of caring and mutual respect. Something as simple as a donation of toiletries, warm winter gloves, or some healthy snacks for kids can, in their own small way, be transformative when people are so financially stressed and resources are scant. And small symbolic acts can speak volumes as well. I recently learned that when guests are welcome to sit down for a noontime meal at the Women's Lunch Place, the tables are adorned with cloth tablecloths, and vases of fresh flowers. The message here: you matter, you are special, you are loved. Like me, I'm sure you were dismayed and horrified by the Russian invasion of Ukraine this spring and the devastating impact this had on the Ukrainian people, thousands of whom lost their homes and became refugees. Financial donations from members of the Dover Church have supported the UCC's efforts to target Ukrainian people most in need through humanitarian relief partners with a history of working in the region. We could not be there, but our money helped support this much greater effort. And I could go on and on about how we've befriended several young Afghanistan refugees whose lives have been upended and supported them in getting established in our country. Or how our youth ministries have authentically engaged with ministries ranging from Common Cathedral to the recent Mate service trip. To me, this is wondrous. Every caring act, no matter how humble, how seemingly insubstantial in our great universe, speaks to us of God's love. Let me end with one small, very personal example. Some of you may know that our adult son, Teddy, suffered a debilitating seizure, fall, and extended hospitalization last spring. I was incredulous and so very grateful for the many acts of small, simple kindnesses bestowed on him and me by strangers each and every day, and I'll share just one of them. I had hit my nadir one day. Ted had been in the hospital several days. We knew it was going to be a long journey back. He frankly looked awful and was in great pain. And I was just feeling this moment of quiet despair and I had my back to him looking out the window, and I was trying to hold it together. And a PCA, it was a personal care attendant. This is the person in the hospital who changes bedpans and cleans wounds. Essential services often undervalued by the rest of us. And she just came up to me very quietly and put her arms around me and said, "It's going to be okay, baby doll." And my heart just opened. It was just a small shared moment between us, but it was an oasis of peace and love and joy at a very, very hard moment. And that carried me through a long time, let me tell you. We can't alone eradicate homelessness, poverty, food insecurity, the ravages of war or natural disasters, or desperately inadequate health care for underserved peoples. But with love and compassion, we can touch lives with small, simple acts that can yield powerful results. The King will reply, "Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me."